This video brought to you by jadedpainting.com. If you need your miniatures painted to a tabletop standard, check out jadedpainting.com. Hey everyone, welcome to another Dark Potential painting tutorial. My name is Jay, and today I'll be showing you how to paint this winter-themed Petrov-Morales Corporation Weapon Specialist with a flame launcher. I began by priming the model gray using Vallejo Air Model Gray Primer. Since we'll be using very intermediate colors, I just went with an intermediate primer such as gray. White would also be a great color. I began by base coating all of the clothing with a very watered down Cantor Blue. I basically used a 1-to-1 mix of Cantor Blue and paint thinner. That way it is very thin. It'll give some base color to all of the uniform, but it will not end up covering most of the nice details which are very fine on this model. My goal is to create a winter themed uniform, so whites, with very dark recesses to make it look almost like it's been war torn and used a lot by this weapon specialist. That way we'll be giving it dark blue recesses and build up layers of white a little bit at a time to make it look like it's an old, worn, slightly dirty uniform. So as you can see here, I'm just covering up all of the clothing, trying to get the blue really good coverage. If after a single coat you are unhappy with the coverage, feel free to do a second coat of watered down Cantor Blue. Just make sure that the first one is completely dry before proceeding to the second one. I then gave all of the uniform a Drakenhoof Nightshade. This shade will get in all the recesses and darken them greatly, so it gives a lot of tonal variation on the uniform already, and the recesses will now really stand out and the raised areas will really pop when the shade is dry. As you can see here, all of the details on the back are now really coming to life. When the shade was dry, I gave all of the clothing a light dry brush of Ghost White, which is a light white produced from Reaper, which actually has a slight blue tinge to it. So it's a very, almost like a very light blue mixed with white. If you don't have Ghost White, I recommend either using just White Scars from Games Workshop or using a White Scars mixed with Lothern Blue to a ratio about 4-to-1 White Scars to Lothern Blue. As you can see, my goal is just to pick up the edge details and the raised areas on all of the uniform and leave the recesses the really nice dark Cantor Blue shades. And then I gave another light dry brush over these areas, and even lighter than before, with a 1-to-1 mix of Ghost White and White Scars. This is just to build up a nice gradient of colors going from an almost white, so an off-white, to another white. So it'll give a lot of variation in colors, and it'll build it up slowly and surely over all of the uniform. And then finally, I gave a very, very light dry brush of White Scars just on the most highest raised areas on the model. So the areas like the chest and the arms and the tops of the boots, places that would normally be hit by the light source. And that way you'll see a nice gradient of a slight off-white to a pure white. I then started on all the blue areas, and I decided to do a blue flame for this flamethrower because it's a winter theme and it'll be a really hot blue flame with Calidor Sky, a base color from the Citadel range. I really like Calidor Sky. It's a nice deep blue that is associated with very ice colored blues, so it's a great base color and gives great coverage over the entire model with a single coat. If you find that your Calidor Sky is going on particularly thick, I recommend diluting it with a little bit of paint thinner. For the blues, I painted the cord on the flame launcher, the tubing on the flame launcher, all of his belts, and straps blue, as well as the outsides of the discs that are on his belt and his backpack, as well as the tops of the chimney on his backpack. As you will probably notice, this step took a little bit of time, seeing as there were a lot of things to paint blue on the model. I'm going with a relatively simple palette of colors, just with whites and blues, because the corporation represents, in my opinion, a very bland color scheme, very realistic and very minimalist, while the aliens have the potential to be very colorful. And since this is a winter scheme, I'm just going with winterish colors, such as Caldor Sky and whites. I decided also to paint all the trim around his uniform with Caldor Sky, whether it be the triangle on his back or the trim around the bottom of his jacket. Remember to be particularly careful when painting the belts because they're very thin, so use a very fine detailed brush and do long thin brush strokes to make sure you don't go outside of the lines. And then for the flame launcher, we're going to be painting a really nice gradient from dark blues to light blues. And with this step nearing completion, we can now turn our attention to continuing the light blue gradients on the model.